Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Folks, meet my twin sister from another mother. Today we are talking to, I'm Rontowski. Vanda, I want you to say your last name for them and let's see if they can get it. Go ahead.
Vanda Mikoloski.
Mikoloski, Rontowski, and Mikoloski. She is, Vanda is who I want to be when I grow up. She is a world traveler, an enlightened soul, yoga person. I don't even know how many great things about her. I'm so happy to have her on the podcast today when we are talking about ayahuasca. It is, how's this good title for you, Vanda? A student of ayahuasca. How is that?
Yeah, I'd say that's really accurate. And I began to, I've participated in maybe 25 ceremonies, maybe 30. I don't know. I didn't really count, but, so I'm getting a little,
you're getting
a little
experience,
mastery. Yeah, a little experience.
Experience and mastery. And I want to jump right in. So many people have asked me about ayahuasca. I just finished a reading that got very intense, and I asked the lady, I was like, have you done this? And she's like, it's on my list. And I think it's on everyone's list. So let's start here. What is ayahuasca?
Well, ayahuasca is it refers to two things. It refers to the tea made by combining the ayahuasca vine with a leaf. There's a couple of different leaves. There are two different leaves you can use that have the DMT. The ayahuasca vine has the MAO inhibitor. Otherwise, DMT wouldn't be orally active. You'd have to smoke it or something.
Oh, and you said the something inhibitor. What was that? You said it blocked out just for a second.
It's an MAO inhibitor. It's what makes the DMT orally active. In other words, you can drink it. In other words, it won't disappear in your stomach acid. So, so some shaman figured out eons ago, centuries ago, that these two plants of the 70,000 species, this is kind of a mystery, of the 70,000 species of plants in the Amazon, that these two put together would have this impact, and that you could drink this tea and basically see God. It's the way I see it. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so for people that don't know, DMT it's already in your brain, correct? Or in your pineal gland?
Correct.
Okay. So
yeah.
It's what makes us, some might say hallucinate, but that's not the right word.
Well, it's present when we dream and it's present when we die. Those are like the two times. And so it definitely has a function in the experience of being in a body, and both you and I have always been sort of fascinated with the immaterial and the relationship of the immaterial to the material. And I'm getting more and more fascinated with it as I approach older. My horizons are getting shorter of time in this body as I see it, and so when you're in your youth, you just like, party, anything possible. And then as you get older, you begin to become kind of fascinated with it. How am I going to be on my deathbed? How am I going to look back at this life? And, not to be morbid or anything, but at the same time, it's like, I want to say I gave it my all, and I dealt with what I had to deal with and, all that stuff. So,
yeah, that's I always say people, and that's probably why church is full of so many older people. They're looking for answers in some sort of way. But I always say people on their deathbed never say, thank God I didn't do that. So you have to do a little bit of everything and try and learn your lessons. And this is a fabulous, I want to say safe way. It's kind of safe way to do it. I know that's a weird leap I made there, but when people do ayahuasca, like you do it through a church, correct?
Yeah, that's one of the ways that I've done it. It's illegal to do it except in a couple of churches where the Santo Daime Church and the União de Vegetal are two churches from Brazil that where they won the federal case. I met the lawyer, actually. I went to the first World Ayahuasca Conference in Ibiza, on the island of Ibiza.
See,
Ibiza,
now stop
called.
right there. You're the only person I know that went to the island of Ibiza. That's how awesome. That's why I want to be you when you grow up. I don't even know what that is.
I had to go. Well, I told them that I was a comic and that I could do some time about my first ayahuasca journey, and would they like some entertainment at the conference? And I totally sold him on the idea. Now, he didn't, pay me an enormous amount of money, but I got the conference for free. And I said, I'm going to the island of Ibiza in the Mediterranean, and I'm going to meet all these cool people. So I did, and it was awesome. And I told some very funny stories, I thought, about my first ayahuasca journey and how daunting it was to, the first exposure was my friends in LA said, oh, you got to do this. It was like kind of going around LA. And then I read an article in National Geographic, which has always been sort of a square magazine,
right.
And they had this lady from one of their writers went down to the Amazon and drank ayahuasca.
There's a weird, is that my computer? There seems to be a real, or does your phone, it does a little squelch. So I'm going to try.
Yeah, there is some feedback. I'm getting some scratchiness or something.
Okay.
Are you, hang on, let me go into my own room and see if it's still quiet in here.
Okay.
Is that better?
That sounds better. I hope. We'll see what happens there. It sounds good. It's just all of a sudden it goes, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's the ayahuasca gods. They want to say something. So, but I have to say, every time I talk to you, my to-do list for my life gets 10 times longer. I have to go to an island out and okay. So,
okay.
So your friends around LA it was kind of going around LA and they were talking about it. And you saw it in National Geographic. That's where we are.
Yeah, and then I read National Geographic, and I thought, oh, this is such a square publication, and look at it. They got this thing, this writer went down to South America. It was like one of their most read articles ever. And she said it was like a wet gray wool coat I had been wearing my whole life was removed from my shoulders.
Wow.
And I said, I want to have that experience, So I found some people who were doing it, and I won't say which country I was in, but I was in one of the countries that is on this planet. And it's legal. It's legal in so many places. And then in the United States, of course, it isn't because
why would we want to spiritually evolve if we lived in the United States? We're right. So.
Exactly. And we've got big pharma anyway, so we got, that. But they can't make money off of things that are in the public domain that are like plants that can't really, profit from that. But I found a way to do it, and my first experience was actually, it's so different because I've done so many of the ayahuasca journeys by now. It is so vastly different one to the other. One can be kind of brutal, where you're looking at the darkest, aspects of your humanity, and then one can be totally joyful, where you're like, oh, I'm hanging out with Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and all these other non-famous saints. There's the famous ones, and then there's the non-famous ones, just like in comedy, right? People, who do you think's funny? And it's like, yes, some of the big names, but also people you don't know, are super funny.
So it might be some of the saints that are not on candles at the dollar store. It might be others like that.
Exactly. They're the A-team over in heaven, and I want to hang out with them. And so I was hanging out with So one of my experiences actually was that, where I saw. Do you want to hear one of my experiences?
Yes, please.
Okay. Because I had some, there's a percentage of your ayahuasca journey where you control it, where your intention, oftentimes my intention is open my heart. I want to see where my heart is shut down. I want to have an open heart, and then there's
when someone presents, like say our listeners go, okay, I want to do this ayahuasca. I have found the country, the place, whatever. Would someone explain this? Like, did a shaman explain this to you on the way? Like what you were doing? No, they didn't just hand you a cup of tea, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no. A good shaman will really set you up to win. And one of the ways that you can do well with it is by doing what they call la dieta, and it's really where you clean up your body and your diet a lot over, like get out sugar, get out caffeine, get out any nicotine, even go on a sexual diet, but no social media, like that. Like some people really rein in their
negativity,
the things that they do to excess.
Yeah, because
or the things that they do just to excess.
Yeah, because
like I think or whatever.
I think most people, if you talk to someone, you say ayahuasca, the first question is, did you throw up? Like that's our biggest fear in the United States, is that we're going to throw up. And is it some of it like you're getting that sort of negative or that lower vibration out for a better trip?
Well, really, yeah, I think it is. Like for me, the more healing that you can do, the lighter your body can be, the less density in your body, the more ayahuasca can work on your psychology, on your mental, on your spiritual plane. If it's not dealing with gross physical stuff.
Right.
Because sometimes it has to do a certain amount of gross physical healing. Like the very first journey I had, she said, "You did a good job preparing for this." When I say she, most ayahuasca people refer to the plant medicine as she, which is weird. But when I heard it, I'm like, whatever. But, and I had read all the Carlos Castaneda books in the 60s about meeting an ally. And I was like, I've never done that. I did LSD a couple of times and mushrooms a couple of times. It wasn't really my thing, but I never met any ally. Like, what the hell is that? Well, I met an ally. The first time I did ayahuasca, I met a female intelligence, and it was like she was giving me a guided tour through my own psyche. They say you can accomplish like 10 years of psychotherapy in one sitting.
Right, and that's the enlightenment that people are looking for, to lighten their load, to see themselves differently, to let go of stuff, right? When they do that?
Because we're all walking wounded in a way, I mean, I've done enough personal growth courses to realize, and it's endless, you know what I mean? I just feel like I tend towards self-righteousness. I tend to think I have the truth, that I know things and that I'm right about things. And it's just such an unattractive feature. And then I've been listening to this poet, Mark Nepo, lately, and he said, consider that all thought is inherited. And I heard that line. I went, all thought is inherited, meaning we don't know shit. Like, we really don't know shit. Pardon me, can I curse on your podcast?
Of course, please.
Yeah, okay. And I'm like, what if that is really the case? And I remember that when I was very young, I had I took some kind of drug that my brothers gave me. It was the 60s, I don't know what. And I remember having an experience that was so merciful and wonderful that said, there's nothing wrong with you. Your parents think there's something wrong with you because they think there's something wrong with them. They've been brainwashed by a culture that says, don't be you because you suck. And every aspect of culture dictates that. Religion, advertising, education, family, every system we have tells you don't be you because you suck.
Right.
And so you're going to have to know. And it was like this merciful communication from another world or something. I didn't know what it was, but it really lifted me as a little girl, because I remember thinking, why is everyone picking on me? They're like, Jesus, is there anything about me that's just fine?
Yeah, they're trying to squash your little light. They're trying to squash your little artistic light, because that's not what society tells you to be.
Right. And I remember having so much compassion for my parents in that moment. Like, oh my God, someone should tell them that don't worry about me. I'm fine. And you're fine too, Mom and Dad, but, and then, and it's funny, years later when I was about 17, my dad's dad died. And he walked down into the basement where we all hung out, and he said, "Kids, I know this is going to sound callous, but it's such a relief he's dead."
Oh.
And my dad had spent his whole life becoming a doctor, becoming a football player, doing everything his father did to get the respect to accomplish the American dream. And then the sum total of that experience was, I'm glad my dad's dead.
He can live his own life now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he died 3 months later.
Oh.
And it was funny because that was only a few years after my brother died. So it was like three men, all the leading men in my family, my grandfather, my dad, and my brother, the oldest son. I have another brother, but and a sister. And but they all died around the same time in the light of all eternity. Like they came here to learn from each other about oppression and living your life for another human being, and the folly of that. Who knows why we're in these skin bags, and what we're here to learn, but
that's funny. Know. I just did I do a card of the day in the morning. I do a tarot card, and I did like a meditation or something. And the message I got was, you're using your body inappropriately. It's only a venue to get you to your dreams. And it's kind of like that. Like I think ayahuasca probably one of the right ways to use your body. So yeah. So you've kind of had all this a kind of spirit awakening from a young age about what is.
Yeah. I was interested in what we were doing here. And I really felt like that we were getting hoodwinked. It was the 1960s, and question authority became one of the thoughts in the culture. And I became very rebellious, which is just reacting to the same thing. You want to be free. That's the total, like my dream is to be free so that others may be free and that they can benefit from what it is in my journey. And I think, there's nothing really noble about that. It's just actually me doing my job as a human, because one of the things ayahuasca showed me was that we all have a, how do you say it? Like much like a liver cell knows how to be a liver cell, and an eyeball cell knows how to be an eyeball cell. Like we have an intelligence, like we are a cell in the human body, in the larger body of humanity, and all of us have a function. Like it could be simply being getting rid of garbage, or being a connector of some sort, or a pressure valve, or like a not very glamorous function in the working of the whole system. And I went, oh my God, I'm not very glamorous, because my function is basically like a pressure valve to help people process their darkness and to be with a lot of darkness. It sure put into perspective why my life has been so bumpy, because, well, you can't be a real comic unless you take some punches, right?
Right. Yes. And, but it's so funny that's an interesting way to say it, to be the pressure valve, which is, and all I can think is, but you get to have fun along the way while you do that job.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you sure do, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to. I'm committed to that. It's been a hard. I mean, I've suffered like many comics with depression and alcoholism and drug addiction when I was younger. But the part of the gift of those things is not everybody goes forth as passionately as I have to find out answers.
Right.
Because they're not suffering. If you're not suffering, you're like, good. You might as well continue just doing what you're doing, But I was suffering so much. So I had to look underneath. Why am I drinking myself to death? What am I anesthetizing? Am I just an asshole who parties too much? Who's irresponsible? Or am I maybe anesthetizing something from my past that I don't want to see, some thought systems and forms that I just can't even see because they're in my blind spot.
Right.
And do I want to see them, And so it's not really glamorous because you end up looking like an alcoholic and a this and a that. And, people, like, I love Mitch Hedberg's line. Yeah, they say alcoholism is a sickness, but it's the only sickness you can get yelled at forever. It's not really glamorous, to go, I know I'm going to experience a lot of heartache and depression and alcoholism, and then looking really, really hard for how to get out of that.
Right.
So I can be with other people and watch and let them process what they're, help them process.
Right. And I feel like, when you, I feel like you may have chosen, these are the lessons you chose in this life. You took on a big bundle this time. That's what much. And I
can tell.
Yeah. So you bring this big bundle to your first ayahuasca experience, and what happens?
Oh my God. The first time was so funny. The very first time it was very somatic, meaning I had a physical sensation in my body, like I was getting healed and diagnosed at the same time, all through my etheric field. It felt like thousands of multicolored electric snakes coursing through my energy body, right? And then I said to myself, whoa, this is intense. I didn't know this was going to be this physical. And she used a line that I used to use with hecklers sometimes when I was doing stand-up. She said, pardon me if I'm assuming a familiarity we have not yet established. And I said, oh my God, that's funny. You're funny. I didn't know you'd be funny. That is a funny line. And using it in that context was nothing I ever thought of. And she goes, well, I have to keep you entertained because it's a lot of healing to do in your body. And then she said, you sure have overused that vagina of yours. And I went, what? Did you just call me a whore? And she was, yes. Oh, but don't worry, we're all whores in some way. And, it was just hysterically funny like that, and also profound and confronting. Yeah. Like a stern but compassionate grandmother who's meeting me right at my level of communication in terms of funny, and at the same time, not backing away from sheer truth. So, like, when people go, oh, it's a drug, it's not. It's not a recreational drug. You have to have the courage to look at yourself, good, bad, and ugly, when you do it, and it's daunting. I mean, there have been times where I've spent a year between ceremonies, a whole year, because it's just like, it's so, you have to get the courage up to do it.
Yeah. And when you first went, how did that first shaman explain? Did she explain did the shaman explain the spirit experience to you, or did?
Yeah, it was a he. He had me go on a special diet and get off social media and even not listen to the radio in the car, and do as much meditation and yoga as possible beforehand to kind of ramp up to it, and then go off everything. So I spent, especially the last week before the ceremony, really dealing with my addictions to food. And I remember I was in Whole Foods right near my house in Venice Beach. And I remember thinking, is this allowed? Is this allowed? And then I went, oh, who are you kidding? You know what is going to serve you and what isn't. You know what's fuel. You know what's healthy fuel for your body and what isn't. Right. You know when you're checking in rather than checking out,
So it was actually working before it even started.
Yeah. And just making it like a ritual, some kind of a sacrifice that you're taking whether or not there's any truth to, I don't know the science of it exactly, but just getting it together to, like Lent for the Christians, giving something up that's kind of dear to your human body is just a reverence to approach this experience with. You don't do that when you're, tripping balls on LSD at a concert. This is a whole different thing than that. This is this is where you set an intention, with other people, you share beforehand. I did have an interview with the shaman to see that I was ready for it, and
that's good to know that there was like an interview, or there wasn't just like, hey, you're just popping pills for something. How did he explain like what you should expect, or did he not explain it? Did he leave it open?
He was so reverent about that she would take care of it, that I was going to meet this entity, this ayahuasca essence, and that, and to just, the only like kind of advice he gave was to be willing to surrender to whatever's coming along with it. And that, he actually said, don't watch a lot of YouTube videos, which I didn't obey. I watched everything. I was voracious. I really wanted to know what this was all about, and what else? He just, I don't know. I just got the idea that I was that it was something very momentous, and that I was going to make it that way, whether it was or wasn't. And in other words, I was kind of I probably approached that question wrong. Like, hey, were you walking down the street and someone tried to sell you ayahuasca? It was more like, no, you sort of went in there. You kind of knew you wanted something. You were on board already. So he just kind of guided you. No. Yeah. And by the way, ayahuasqueros will not twist your arm in any. They don't have any investment in you doing that.
Right.
In fact, the Santo Daime Church, which I joined, which is very difficult to find, by the way, the Santo Daime people, the lady who led the, I won't say where the church is because they're very underground still, because they won the federal suit in Ashland, Oregon, but I'm not sure if that applies to all the locations.
Right. And they probably don't want a flood of, amateurs that aren't really in it, that just, I want to not be mad at my mom,
they don't mind because it's really the daime. It's really, when they call it the daime, they call ayahuasca the daime, which means forgives me, meaning you can go and there's this generosity in God that you can speak to, that where you can say, give me, help me, show me, teach me, so they wouldn't mind. But at the same time, it is a religion, and it does have its, pomp and ceremony and ritual of a religion, which is not something that, I've never loved religion very much, but, it's kind of weird because to me, ayahuasca is a wild and woolly entity, a spirit in nature that is so irreverent and magical. And then religion to me has always been just the opposite, where humans, kind of
being a drag, giving out rules.
Yeah. Especially growing up as a Catholic in the Latin masses and all that stuff. So it was really a drag for me.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
So you go on. So when you let's jump. This is really weird. Let's jump to coming out of the first time you did it. Like, do you need to adjust to life? Is everything kind of cockeyed for a little bit?
Yeah. Thank you. My experience was very tender. I was very tender. I felt like a newborn baby. And you don't want to hang out with a lot of people who are just really in the world and being, abrasively worldly, because you've just been in a very sweet and sometimes not, but a sensitive place where you're very attuned to the thinness of the veil. Right. Between the physical reality and the reality of energy and spirits and your dead friends and all that, and you're like, I thought I was Vanda, her whole psychology and her addictions and her, I thought I was a Vanda, but I'm like something a little bit more, I don't know, vast than that. And everybody is.
Yeah, but, and that veil, it's so interesting that veil is getting so much thinner now that it's like, I think people are starting to have experiences, not quite like this, but I almost wonder what that experience now might be even more intense. But it's sort of this discovery that you are so much more than your definition of yourself.
Yeah, and you get to work with those energies all the time, right? Because you're constantly working with subtle energies.
Yeah, and people know I have done this. I've talked about it before, but I want this podcast to be all about you, and they've heard my stories, and you are such a great representative of what this is about. Because I know there's a lot of comics that do a lot of ayahuasca. They just do it. They like try to do it once a week or something, and I'm like, I don't know what that's about, and I cannot even imagine their physically that would just, I don't know, destroy. Like that seems, it's just, I don't know. It just that doesn't seem right.
I'm considering going to the Amazon and doing a month-long retreat.
Wow.
Where you do it like almost every 3 days.
My God, you would float home. You wouldn't even need an airplane. You would float home, Vanda.
Right. But they also are really good about, self-care during that time, bathing you in flower blossoms and doing energy healing work on you and yoga and stuff. So they really, really, you're held in a container. And but my temple of choice down there is called Temple of the Way of Light, outside of Iquitos, Peru. I like those people very much because I've heard about them from several sources. And I would go work with them because I know that they all do the work themselves. So they're not just a money-making thing, which in countries as poor as some of those countries are, you got to watch out for, the fake people who are just out to make some bucks from the rich Americans,
Okay. Yeah. And again, my fault. I had a reading that went wrong because we have 10 minutes left.
Oh no.
I know. I apologize to my listeners who I know I'm going to get emails. Please feel free. Yes, I will have her back. I promise. The most interesting woman in the world. I'll have her back. So have you ever had a negative experience, which if negative, negative's too big of a word, or has somebody that had a different experience that frightened them maybe?
Oh yeah. That's what you got to be ready for. And when you get sick on ayahuasca, I've never vomited. They make a big deal about that, but that's part of the sensationalism of the coverage, about on YouTube and whatnot. I've never vomited, but I've seen people vomit and have diarrhea, and it's not. But the major thing that was different in reality than what I was thinking it might be was you're not out of control. It's like a roller coaster. You're in a cycle of learning and seeing things, and sometimes visuals like trippy, fractal, flowery stuff. And then sometimes you're just sitting and breathing and your eyes are open, and then you go back in and then out and then in and then out, So it's not an alcoholic
blackout.
Yeah, no. I was really worried I was going to be out of control and vomiting everywhere, but it wasn't. I've only seen once in my many experiences now, someone like a little bit out of control where they pooped themselves. And, but that's one out of hundreds and hundreds of people now that I've done it with.
And and that's not really, that's not the worst thing that could happen. I know people think, I'm going to be running through the streets naked in traffic. And that's
no. Yeah, no. Especially if you have, the people, the set and setting are so important. You want people you trust that are drinking, not drinking ayahuasca to the point where they're tripping like you are, but but they have to be doing a little bit of it so that they can babysit you energetically and make sure you're okay physically too.
And that's what the shaman does. The shaman has a little, right? That's what the shaman.
That's what a shaman does, absolutely. And they're so masterful in the world of subtle energies that they know how to come up behind you and say and help you do battle with some of your demons if that's what you're doing. They know where you're at. You know, I once called a shaman over. Only once in all my ceremonies did I actually feel so kind of overwhelmed and sad that I had to call someone over. And I called him over and I said, you know, the pain and sadness of this world, it seems endless. It's endless. The murder, the violence, the rape, the pedophilia, just all of it. It just seems endless. And he goes, yeah, let that arise. Let that pass through you. Let it go. You know, in other words, don't suppress that and be sitting on top of it, that hatred or fear of the world. Let it go. Let it go. You know, and so if any of your listeners want to contact me on Facebook, they can. I'm very accessible there, and we can have a further conversation. It's not appropriate for everybody, and for some people, it's their very next step. So I would be honored to be a stepping stone in that.
Right, and I'll put and Vanda's name will be in the description, so you can look that up. And I don't think there's 100 people with this name on Facebook, so you should find her right away. But I'm going to make you work right up until the moment. So after he said let that go and let it pass through, what did you feel, or what happened on the other side? Like, was there this relief?
I was laughing. I was laughing because he said, why don't you drink some more? I think it's time for you to drink some more, a second cup. And so I walked up to my friends who were drinking their second cup, and they said, it's awesome. I said, how are you doing? And they said, it's awesome. And I went, oh, I'm just over here. I'm just going to go back over here and sit with all the rape and violence and brutality of humanity. See you later. See ya. You know, like, so I was funny. You know what I mean? Like, I was in the funny mode. But
you were pressure relieving. You were the valve to relieve the pressure in the moment.
Yeah, of my own pressure. Yeah. That's right. Because it was like, I'm going to go back over. I know I have to be with this. I know I have to. Because she doesn't deliver things half-assed. You know, she kind of delivers what you need in that moment and what your soul needs. And Karen, I could talk about this endlessly. Really, I'm fascinated with it still, with what it is. And every time I watch, like I was just trying to bone up on some of the science of it because you had asked me about that, and I thought, and I started watching a documentary, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be with her again, because the sense is that you're with God itself, and it's a feminine essence, and you know, who knows? I mean, what it actually is, but you get the sense that you're touching into the creator of all things, and that there's like this vast, how do you say it? Like there's no hierarchies in the world of God. In other words, there's like we tend to think of ourselves as superior, inferior when we're in our ego mode, right? And then you compare yourself and you come up short or whatever. But in the world of ayahuasca, everything's even. There's nothing in creativity that is any greater or lesser than anything else in creativity. You know, there's the frog world, and they're just as valid as the human world. And then there's the tree world, and it's very, very slow and dense, but it's just as valid as our reality, you know, and that's fascinating.
It's funny because I remember when I did it, my intention was, I want to see the Matrix. I want to see the Matrix. And then I remember hearing in my head, I remember saying while I was, you know, in it, I said, I want to see the Matrix. And I remember like this voice looking at me like, are you sure you're ready to see the Matrix? And I was like, no, you're right. We'll do something else.
And it's like she won't go farther than you really want to go. Like some people go, I experienced ego death. You got to be ready for that. I'm like, no, you don't really have to be. With some people, she'll just show you a little bit about your own beauty or something like that. Like it seems like she knows exactly where to go,
right,
and what to give you. And you don't have to experience ego death, like unless you really want to, unless you're ready for that,
No.
So, but I did see some really interesting things. Sometimes it's just, is that wind?
Oh, I'm sorry. I turned on my fan. This is Mercury retrograde, and only Vanda could hear the wind because I have this whole setup where you hear me through the computer and then your voice comes out the computer into my Zoom, and I have a microphone.
Oh,
Yes.
Got it. Okay, got it.
LA is like 100 degrees and Mercury is retrograde, and we're getting through this, Vanda. And it's going to be great.
Oh my God. I know. I want to turn on my air conditioning too, but it's too loud. But anyway, so one of the things that I was sitting, what time is it? Do we have 3 minutes?
We have, let's see, 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'll tell you one of my experiences. I drank ayahuasca in nature, and with a group of a bunch of doctors and dentists and psychiatrists.
Oh dear.
And it was an interesting group of people. And this one psychiatrist was bringing his patients, even though he could risk his license. But he said, I can't not, given what my commitment is to these people.
Right.
I can't not. And anyway, I was sitting out in this field, and it was in between like trips, right? My eyes were open. I was still very much active in me, the medicine, and I saw a bee going from flower to flower, and I said to myself, "Oh, that's sex. Like God loves sex. Like everything around here is sex, 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 And then I had the thought, why is there so much shame around that?
Right.
Like in our culture and in me, there's so much shame around sex and sexuality. You call someone a whore, and that's not a compliment. That's like, if you call someone a virtuoso because they got good at the piano, that's a compliment. But if someone gets good at sex and has a lot of it, that's not a compliment.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
It should be the same thing, right? But there's so much shame around it because, then ayahuasca sort of took me through this tunnel back through time of all the women ever who had used their sexuality as a way to survive and feed their children and whatever, and how bad they felt about violating their own integrity, their own sense of what's right, their own morality, their own religious, their spiritual belief systems by using their hoo-hoo to get the ha-ha,
right.
and and I was shown that as I face my own lack of integrity in that area. And I've had a lot of, sexual experiences in my day, because I lived a real rock and roll lifestyle. Most comics do until they can't anymore. But because I lived such a rock and roll, I saw that I can do some healing in this moment, and that you can heal all of womankind retroactively too, back into history. That you can heal something in your body, mind, spirit. And because in the other world, there is no time, there's no history, there's no past. So women, they need to heal themselves of their own violation of their own integrity.
It's almost
the body.
It's almost interesting. And it is something that people don't realize how much everybody comes in here worried about when I read tarot cards. They're always worried about healing someone else. And I'm very much about when you shift your energy, that person is going to shift. And all you can be is a teacher or a student. And you, by changing yourself, you really change more than that. There's more of a win there, is how I want to say it. And we're always so responsible for everyone else, and in the wrong way. We'll enable someone else, but we will not be the example of someone that has made themselves better.
Right. Isn't that funny that we don't do that? But well, my attention is on someone else and what they need and how they should change and being in their business. And like, it's their business if they want to drink alcoholically or whatever whatever their issue is. It's really their business. Now, I can say something to someone I love, like, I'm concerned about you and your health. Are you okay?
Right.
And I need to know because I love you. And for me, that has integrity. I say my piece, and it's, I want to let you know that your drinking looks out of control to me, right. or whatever. But at the same time, I'm just doing that for me. Like, I'm going to do that for me. And then I just continue to let go of addictive behaviors in my life, And it seems to me like everyone's an addict, that no one escapes that there's, if it isn't something that's going to kill you, like, drugs or alcohol right away, it's littler things, with just the ways that we check out. And
there's something about that vibration of worry that people think they're better people if they worry about everyone else.
Yeah. That's funny.
It's when you watch someone that walks away from, we know there's people that you have to walk away from them to go, all right, they're going to destroy themselves. I've lent a hand out every time I can. But now I got to go. And there's more bravery in that, but people will see that as a callous person other than the person that's worried about them all the time. But it really is, the responsibility has to go around.
Yeah, you know what? One of the best things for my active alcoholism was when I was just into it. I didn't, it wasn't a problem for me. I didn't have a drinking problem until it became a problem for the state because I got 2 DUIs at age 40. And it became a problem for my sister-in-law who said, you're not welcome here anymore, not if you're drinking. And I went, oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't say thank you right away, honestly. I just was like, whoa, like, that's a wake-up call. Okay. Like, sometimes the best thing you can do for somebody is walk away.
Right.
And go,
hey,
you know what?
Yeah.
Love you, and it's not going to work for us to hang out. Yeah.
Right. And you don't understand.
Huh?
I do not know what that was, but actually I think our time is up, so it worked.
No.
I know.
I love talking to you. It's so interesting and so fun.
I know. I miss you. I love that I texted you way too early in the morning, and I was like, oh, no. And you were like, I'm already at the top of a mountain. I've already climbed a mountain today.
My friend Steve and I climbed the mountain. It was so cool. Yeah. All right. Well,
all right, my dear. Tell everybody where they can find you. I'm going to spell your name for everybody that wants to find you on Facebook. It will be in the description. It's Vanda, Vanda, and the last name Mikoloski, double SKI. Today is what we got. Thank you so much, my darling. We will have you on again, and I don't know what else to say, but I adore you.
I adore you too. Bye.
Okay, bye, honey. People are always asking me, Karen, you are so knowledgeable about tarot, ghosts, and otherworldly spirits. How do you stay so organized and grounded here on Earth? And I have to tell them my secret weapon. It's black tourmaline. And Nita over at nitaapple.com. After years of complaining about all the text messages and emails back and forth, trying to schedule tarot readings and chasing after payments, Nita installed Acuity Scheduler on my website, and now I just get a little ding on my phone, and that tells me someone has made an appointment and the money is already in my account. I love that little ding, except every time it goes off, Courage runs to his food bowl. 5 minutes with Nita can save you 5 hours of bumbling around and trying to do things yourself. So if you spend 10 minutes with her, that'll save you like 72 hours or something like that. I don't know. I'm not good with math, but you know who is? Nita. That's who I would ask. Want to end all the emails back and forth and get paid up front when clients schedule time with you? Then hop on over to nitaapple.com/services and let Nita get you set up with a simple system that will make your life so much easier. Use coupon code BOO4U and get 20% off any products or services. She's got a lot of services and products that can save you time and money. That's BOO4U, all lowercase, BOO, the number 4, the letter U, and get 20% off. That's Nita Apple at nitaapple.com/services. NITAAPPLE.com/services, and make your life easier today.